Hey everyone, yeah, really excited today. One of the big topics of conversation that we want to talk about right now is Web3 games going mainstream. This is going to be a big deal over the next, I would say, year or so. We had a really interesting beginning of crypto games with DeFi games. Then you had casual games, and now you're actually going to start seeing games going more mainstream. So I want to bring on some of the few folks on stage. Todd, do you want to come up? And Anton, Pasquale. Awesome. So I think, just to kick things off, it would be really good to, before I dive into all the questions that I want to start talking about with crypto games and where things are going, I want to really understand just the backgrounds of each of you and the project they're working on. So why not just why don't we start with you, Anton? Just talk about, what Pocket Worlds is at a high level and what you do there.
Yeah, sure. Well, great to be here. Thanks for having us. So our company's called Pocket Worlds. We have two products, one called Highrise and another called Everskies. And they're both UGC virtual worlds. I guess people today call them metaverses. When we started in 2013, they were called virtual worlds. And we have about 2 million monthly active users on Highrise, about 1 million monthly active users on Everskies. Both of them are actually mobile first, although Everskies has a web presence and Highrise is coming to web in about a month or two. We're about 100 people, did about 30 million in revenue last year, about 100 million in secondary market transaction volume. And we are building a subnet on Avalanche today to power our economy, which we'll talk about later.
Awesome. Pasquale?
Of course, thanks for having me here. My name is Pasquale, I work for Bloodloop. Bloodloop is probably the world's first MMO FPS built on Web3. If I had to oversimplify it, I'd say that Bloodloop will be, if you're gamers, a mixture of Destiny and Fortnite. And we're trying to push the adoption barriers of Web3, providing users with something they're already fond of on Web2 gaming. Building it, though, with a very strong player-driven economic model that can last long and can go autopilot once the game is launched. Of course, we're building on an Avalanche subnet, even though we are hard forking the subnet to build in our own function thanks to the incredible personalizable feature of the subnets. And I'd say that's it, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, really excited about first-person shooters, especially. Todd, why don't we kick it off to you?
Yeah, nice to see you all, and thanks for having me. So I'm the co-founder and COO of Gamestar Plus. We are a nascent streaming game platform. We kind of refer to ourselves internally as the Netflix of game night. So think about a multi-platform streamer, anything from connected TV apps, game consoles, mobile phones, even just the web at GamestarPlus.com. And just clusters of like hyper-casual, familiar, like durable brands that have powered game night forever. Everything from adaptations of card and board games to every AAA game show you could imagine, streaming Family Feud with Steve Harvey hosting a game night in your living room. Monopoly, Clue, Risk, those sorts of things will be coming as well. Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy. And the entire platform has a virtual currency that's built on Avalanche. So, we're really excited about kind of breaking the wall that has always existed in these virtual currencies. Obviously, it's a one-way valve. Like, you can put money in, but then it's kind of locked in that game. There's a really cool opportunity here to actually, put money into the game, turn it into more, and extract real-world value for the users. So we're super excited about that.
Yeah, definitely really excited, and actually I want to unpack a little bit more there in a little bit. So I guess before we dive into a little bit deeper on specifics about your games, I want to understand a little bit what made you want to go into Web3 game and convert actually from Web2 to Web3, and what are some of the key benefits that you think bring with Web3? Why don't we start with you, Anton?
Yeah, sure. So we have a virtual economy. We have a lot of secondary market transaction volume, people buying, selling, trading, currency, virtual goods between each other on our centralized database. I guess, so I got into blockchain in 2013. That's when I first bought Bitcoin. In 2018, we actually did an Ethereum-focused NFT project. This was like very early in NFTs, and realized the infrastructure wasn't there yet. But the reason why we've been kind of experimenting and exploring in this space for so long is because we have this fundamental belief that the right technology for a virtual economy, or an economy that is like entirely virtual, the right technology for that, foundationally, is composable permissionless money, right? Because once you have composable permissionless money, anyone can build or integrate applications that use your money, or use your NFTs in the case of non-fungible assets or tokens. And so that's why we've basically since the advent of blockchain thought this is the right tech for the kind of products that we build and the kind of worlds that we build. And actually when kind of Avalanche came along is when we saw an opportunity to build something that has UX that can work with our users, right? We're not a business that's trying to attract necessarily a ton of crypto native people. We're actually trying to bring our 3 million MAU over to use this technology so that they can access exchanges, so that they can rent out their assets, so they can do kind of everything that, again, composable permissionless infrastructure allows and enables without necessarily needing to launch on Steam or something like that, which is a centralized, very much controlled, kind of API-driven ecosystem. So yeah, that's why we're moving in that direction.
So it sounds like composability is like a really big thing, and would you say like liquidity or extracting value is I guess another piece to that? And that's, I mean, I feel like that is one of the big pushes of why people are going Web2 to Web3. Is that what you're seeing with how are you thinking with first-person shooters, and what made you want to kind of go and make that jump to Web3?
Well, in general, of course, I agree with Anton with the most part of what he said, actually, with all what he said. But the main reason for Bloodloop to be built on Web3 rather than on Web2 was the fact that we have seen that Web3 can be considered as the natural evolution of gaming. As a gamer, I probably spent thousands of dollars on worthless skin that I can't resell, and that I'm going against terms of service that I try to resell on secondary marketplace or whatever. And all the money that I've spent are literally locked in the game that I've played. And the majority of the Web2 games are exploiting users as a cash grab, basically. So you get, of course, you give them something in returns for the money that you've spent, but you're just actually renting out server space, and you're getting something as long as the game lasts, and you never actually own the asset that you bought for. And of course, that's where the natural evolution of gaming kicks in. The fact that the users are spending for something that they actually physically, or at least they are certified that they are owning the asset that they paid for. And at the same time, Web3 allows for founders to actually give back to what makes a game successful, which is community. Your game could be the best one on the market, but if you can't attract users, and if you're not rewarding your user for the time that they spend on it, it's not going to work. So I think that projects and founders and games should be giving out the most that they can back to their user for what they're doing. Because of course, they are the one, especially in player-driven economic model game, even World of Warcraft, an example, they are the one running the game. Without them, the game won't work. So they should be rewarded for that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm waiting for the day where I can actually sell my mounts. I've played a ton of World of Warcraft, and I just need to offload that. So, but I guess with Todd, I'm actually curious. You're disrupting a really interesting industry with. You're trying to take over board games and with interactive gameplay and blockchain. How does Web3 tie in with your strategy to attract users, and where does that come into play with you?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think Anton actually hit it. We're not really looking, specifically and narrowly for the Web3 crypto blockchain savvy players. Of course, they and all are welcome, but this is an extraordinarily mainstream, Main Street product. So, first and foremost, it is important that all these experiences we develop deserve to exist on their own. They're just straight up games that, are fun session after session, they're engaging, they're rewarding. We're not necessarily bending these games around the fact that there's a token or a play to earn component, because I think we've seen a lot of recent examples of games that exist only for that going down and potentially likely not coming back. So in actuality, our blockchain layer will be largely opaque to the average user. You think about the large swath of the population that gets pulled into game nights, relative to maybe like what the, to your point, what's the hardcore like Steam gaming population or console. Those are different audiences. So to the user, this will occur just like any other virtual currency that they've been familiar with since Mario Brothers. Some coin or point system that accrues based on performance or continued engagement or outcomes, and obviously there's levels and gamification and all that other stuff. The component that's available for those that want it and are keen to dig in is essentially that two-way valve again, right? Where the in-game currency can be converted into our governance token, taken off platform, and then bought, sold, traded for value, and all sorts of really clever and thoughtful utility for the token within the game to actually enrich it, embellish it. Things like entering tournaments, time-based, multiplayer tournaments, skins, all the things you'd expect, typically. And so this is the first time that there is a game platform, that has all of these different, very unique games within it, but a singular virtual currency as the connective thread between all of them.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think there's been a lot of different implementations with crypto assets and games, and figuring out the economics, right? So even Web2 games had this issue with creating sustainable economics. This is World of Warcraft had a ton of inflation with gold, and so figuring out how you create sustainable economics with crypto assets is another issue, right? Because you have access to liquidity, composability with applications. So what are some things that, and I'm going to leave this a little open-ended, so anyone can take this, but what are some things that you purposely maybe have done to have sustainable economics, and things that you're thinking about when it's involving other financial products involved with your game or owning these assets? And so, yeah, I'll leave that one kind of open-ended.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just want to kick in real quick. I was talking about with Anton before the panel, and I think that applies most to the type of game that we're building. Honestly, the first thing that you have to do when you're thinking about a game right now on Web3 is to run as fast as you can from the dual token, reward token model, and game token system. Because if the game is actually paying out for rewards from its own token liquidity, at some point it's going to collapse, because it's a game that needs to run on user acquisition. And in an example, during this bear market, you wouldn't be able to acquire users. So the best thing I'd say, and that's what we're doing as well, is trying to actually run on a governance, even if you want to run on a dual token system, run on a governance and game token system, where you're not directly rewarding users with cash, but you're rewarding them with incentives that they can use in the in-game economy to actually gather some rewards from other players. As long as the economic model is run from players and they're setting the prices, they're setting the price bars, then it's going to probably work out. And it can also work with just 10,000 or 15,000 players. But when you're requiring players to pull in liquidity, then it's going to collapse at some point, because there's no sustainability in this one, this model.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, do you have something you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just share that I think our goal is to give value to our users, and they pay for it in some way. They could pay for it with US dollars. They could pay for it in our token. They could pay for it in USDC. That's our job as game developers, is to create that value. What the permissionless composable infrastructure does is it allows others to basically tap into that value and create infrastructure around that value, so that that value can then be, it could be levered, it could be exchanged for other assets. There's lots of things that are made possible when you have a permissionless composable ecosystem. But our goal is to create value where our users can actually obtain virtual goods that they want. In our case, when it comes to both High-Rise and Everskies, we're status games. Right? The end game, I think for any multiplayer game, whether it's a competitive skill-based game or it's a cosmetic game, the end game is status. How do people see you? What does your social network look like on that platform? And that's ultimately what people pay for. That's why I paid for these shoes. It's like I'm trying to gain status. And ultimately, that's kind of what we sell within our ecosystem. And then what we're trying to do is allow all these third-party developers and applications using this permissionless composable ecosystem to basically create applications or features that can tap into that kind of status game and the value that we sell, if that makes sense.
Right, and I think the biggest thing for crypto is just like the user experience, right? That is the toughest thing. That is one of our biggest missions. That when we're working on the core wallet and trying to streamline user onboarding. And that is such a major piece of what we're trying to do on Avalanche. And so I think with games, how are you guys thinking with onboarding users? And Todd, I know you're going into a really interesting industry where you're with board, taking over the board game industry with interactive gameplay. And so what does that exactly mean when you onboard a user with something that historically has just been really easy to pick up and start playing, but now you're introducing this whole Web3 layer. How are you thinking about onboarding users into your world?
Yeah, that's a good question. For us, frictionlessness and elegance and ease are the orders of the day. If our user experience can't check those boxes, then we are failing, because this is a platform made for everybody. And our expectation and hope is that Gamestar will reach that level of sort of adoption, ubiquity that pushes through like generational barriers. Like for instance, my dad, 72 years old, lives in the Midwest. Like the two things that he can do that he feels proud about is he can check his Facebook. I wish he wouldn't. And he can stream. Like he can do Netflix. So he loves that, and he loves telling me about it. Like we need to be at that level of like approachability with respects to the first-time user experience, the onboarding, the tutorials, and again letting people self-select into like greater levels of like depth or intrigue based on their appetite. Because again, we kind of have the challenge of serving like an extraordinarily like broad market from non-tech savvy folks all the way to very hardcore gamers. Like something I didn't quite fully understand until we started developing this business a few years ago is there is actually a huge overlap between hardcore gamers. I mean, I'm talking like 100 Thieves, like FaZe Clan type, who are like really keen on this. This is what hardcore gamers do to unwind. They play board games. They play casual social games because hardcore gaming is work. So creating an experience that allows people to self-select into those different levels, I think is the most important. That we're not hammering people over the head, and it creates challenges for us too, like with respects to our messaging. What we're saying to what audiences and what channels, right? But at the end of the day, I think that it's better to be early on this stuff, and again, just being really thoughtful with the deployment. And I would just briefly address the question you asked before, because I think it's a really important one. How do you create economic stability within these games? You don't instantly like become Venezuela or something, and you're like, oh gosh, that didn't go great. I got to give a big shout out to our crypto incubation partner, the Faculty Group. The core Gamestar team are product guys, entertainment guys. Like I'm ex-Sony, people that have rich histories in like gaming and product and streaming. We are not crypto Web3 subject matter experts, but they have done everything, from the incubation to the token utility to an extraordinarily thoughtful dual token model that essentially takes out the destabilization of like, being tied to something else. It's a pretty simple model. The more people use and like and enjoy our platform, the crypto or the value of that creates upward pressure there. So that was something they did a fantastic job with, and I think is super important.
Awesome, and then I guess going to you, Anton, on the user experience front, we've been talking with you guys for a while about deploying a subnet and how that works with the user experience. What are some things that maybe you guys are thinking about with onboarding users? I mean, you already have this existing user base. How are you thinking about how that's going to affect your existing user base with that conversion, especially with onboarding? How are you thinking about the whole user journey there?
Yeah, I'll share a few things. One, in terms of the kind of going back, this is related to the sustainable economy thing, is we're never doing a private sale or a public sale of our token. We are only distributing it to our users as rewards and airdrops for participation in our ecosystem. I think that's one way that it doesn't necessarily need to lead to like a stable economy, but I think it's an important component because it means that you're not selling 20, 30, 40% of your token to a bunch of financial speculators with a 2-year time horizon. And so it's really important for us that we're able to do that. We have the luxury to be able to do that as a profitable gaming company. In terms of the subnet, so our core focus is very much user experience because we're trying to onboard our existing users into this ecosystem. And so the way that we're doing that is kind of in order of operations. We're giving people wallets that are custodied. We're working with some third-party vendors to do that. Then we're solving the bridging problem, which is, hey, you have your assets now. Maybe we airdropped it to you. How do you get it out of Highrise, or how do you use it or leverage it? Do you use an exchange on our subnet, or do you use an exchange on the C chain? Likely we'll start with bridging so that you can bridge your assets over to the C chain and then use an exchange on the C chain. And I will say that I think for us, the way that we think about the UX, we care more about how you get rewarded and how you use your currency than how you get that currency out and how you swap it for, say, USDC or whatever. If you're going through that effort, you're going to go through the effort to learn. I think the real challenge is on the onboarding, right? Like, how do you actually first get the token? How do you actually first have the ability to spend it? And that's like our first order thing that we're trying to solve. And the reason why we're using the subnet is we can use our token as the gas token. We can cover the fees on all the transaction fees. We can work with our own on-ramp partners. So we're working with fiat on-ramp partners for people to be able to buy the token, all that kind of stuff. So for us, it's like the onboarding. And then if you want to exit or you want liquidity, then you're kind of a more experienced player. You're going to go through the effort of kind of figuring that out. But although eventually, long term, we want to make that also super seamless.
Awesome, yeah. And I was actually also going to ask, what kind of drew you to Avalanche, and what made you want to actually deploy on it? User experience sounds like part of it. Pasquale, why don't we kick it off to you?
Well, the choice was obvious regarding Avalanche, mainly for the subnets opportunity that you guys gave us. So in general, when you're trying to build up a game, you either go for your own layer 2, which is going to become most likely a ghost chain because you're only project running on that layer 2, or you are using an Avalanche subnet. And it was the best obvious choice that we could make, also because of how customizable it is. As I was saying, we hard forked the subnet code, and we actually developed a gas fee selective subnet that allows us to give out to users the ability to not pay for gas fees when you're doing transaction in-game, and you're only paying for gas fees when you're interacting with the DeFi backbone related to the game or the bridges and the swaps. This basically removes one of the biggest friction points for Web2 users, which is continuing to pay, even if it's a very small amount after you have already paid for an NFT to play the game. I mean, if I'm playing League of Legends, in example, I've downloaded it, maybe I've bought a skin, but I don't have to play each time I want to do, I don't have to pay each time I want to do something. And that's a very big friction point in the ecosystem. And of course, then the Avalanche subnets gave us the speed that we needed for transactions, because you don't want player waiting even for 3 seconds for something to go through. It can happen 1 time, it can happen 2 times, but at the 3rd time, you'll get impatient and quit the game. And that's something that always happens. I mean, gamers has the attention span of a goldfish, so you want to keep them focused as long as possible on the game without them having to quit or to do anything else. Apart from that, the Avalanche ecosystem is brilliant, and it's very vibrant. It feels like being part of a family. You guys are super helpful. If there's anything wrong, we can just get back to you real quick, and you don't get this experience with any other chains and with any other provider on the market.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think on the subnet piece, the gas token structure is like a big piece of why a lot of games are interested in looking at how they actually can integrate it. And the user experience when you change the gas fee token to make, using your game token as gas is kind of a really interesting thing that's been going on. Todd, what kind of drew you to Avalanche?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a combination of a few like kind of macro things. Like the first of all is like the size, the scale, right? I mean, a major player. Also the focus, right? A big emphasis and a keen interest in gaming. And the third thing was the aligned incentives, right? Like I love how proactive Avalanche and Blizzard are with investing in and like really getting skin in the game for their companies. Like that is like one of the biggest fundamental principles of our business is aligned incentives. Whether it's one of my co-founders who's Steve Harvey. Like initially we were just going to pay him to appear in games, and we ended up striking a deal. And he's one of a few people on the founders cap table. Like he has incentive throughout the life cycle of this business to serve as the face of Family Game Night, to host Family Feud and other titles, to do press tours, to include this and stuff. So whether it's stuff like that, or the faculty group who obviously has a lot of skin in the game on the token side as well as the equity side, or here with Avalanche on the blockchain, I think you kind of put yourself in a bad spot if there are component parts of your business that are mission critical and the folks that you're relying on to fulfill them don't have the same upside you do. So it's kind of a combination of those things. And I actually do personally really have a keen interest in the sustainability thing, because obviously that's kind of like a big dark thing that not a lot of people talk about in this industry. So I like that y'all are out in front of that and these things are like edible or whatever. So yeah, it's awesome.
Awesome. And I know that we have less than a minute right now, but I want to end off with just some key updates that you can share over the next 6 months that you're looking forward to, and what people can expect. Why don't we kick it off with you, Anton?
Sure, yeah. So we're launching something called the High-Rise World, which allows anyone to build their own high-rise. So basically, you can take our platform and take our tech, and the way that we think about it is if you're a brand or a community or an IP holder, you have a Reddit, you have a Discord, we think you should also have a high-rise. That high-rise is essentially your own Roblox instance or sandbox instance using our technology. It's not going to be for everybody, but it comes with a business model. You can sell virtual goods into your high-rise. Obviously, it's a place where people can connect and socialize. Your fandom can create content in your high-rise. And so we're launching our first third-party high-rise next month with an NFT collection called Capsule House. And we'll be working with a bunch of other NFT collections to launch their high-rises, as well as some other communities that are outside of the crypto space. So that's a big thing. And then obviously we're launching the subnet and our token and all that kind of stuff within the next 2-3 months.
Awesome. And real quick, Pasquale.
First of all, I have an update that is actually live, will be live right after the panel, which is that our subnet is actually live on testnet and can be tested out. We are deploying the faucet tonight, I believe. Actually, it's already live, but we'll be sharing the link tonight. And you guys can create your own smart contracts on that and test out the gas fee selective subnet features, which is helpful for us as well. And in the next 6 months, I'd say that by August, we're going to be release our first NFT collection, which is going to be playable character with unique traits and benefits to be one of the early beta adopter of the project. And by December, we'll be launching the closed beta version of the game, which will be accessible with the NFT both in August. And by January, then we are probably launching live, if everything goes well, with the public beta version of the product and open beta days that everyone can test out without buying NFTs.
Awesome. And Todd, what can we look over the next 6 months?
Yeah, a lot. This is a big inflection point for us. So this is a major, point where we're announcing this partnership with Avalanche that we're super excited about. Beyond that, on the core product side, we're rolling out more and more titles all of the time. So in the next couple of weeks, you guys can pick up Seen It. In its first incarnation, Seen It was the world's best-selling DVD game of all time. It's movie and TV trivia. It's chock full of awesome content from everything from Iron Man to The Godfather and everything in between. It's super fun. So we're relaunching that on streaming with Mario Lopez as your host. You can buy that exclusively at Target, along with our Family Feud title. Jeopardy with Ken Jennings, Wheel of Fortune will follow, and then about another dozen games to kind of fill out our year one launch slate. And a whole bunch of stuff that I'm really excited about that I can't quite talk about yet, too. So,
all right, soon.
Stay tuned. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. Let's give it a round of applause for everyone coming up here. Thank you.